Greetings everyone. Welcome to part 3. Zaranyzerak here, guest starring on TheCigaretteBurns. Okay, so we've established somewhere in the mix of my babbling of the past two parts that the two versions I was primarily familiar with, and I guess still primarily familiar with, would be the international cut and the director's cut, the 1992 director's cut. And then subsequently I've seen the final cut once. I've actually only seen the final cut once. And being so intimately familiar with those two previous versions, I pretty much spotted all the changes in the final cut right away. Now, I was actually going to rewatch the final cut before doing this review, and but unfortunately I've just been so hella busy that I just have not had time between taking care of the baby and working on a bunch of video projects. Actually, you see all these videotapes behind me? These are old videos of mine from the 90s. Coincidentally, one of which I demonstrate my first Laserdisc player and show off Blade Runner, that I've been going through for a special series that I'm doing on my channel. So it's just been, I've been up to my eyeballs in stuff. So I just haven't had time to sit down and rewatch it. So anyway, I figured, you know what, I don't need to frickin' rewatch it. This is Blade Runner. I know Blade Runner. Okay? Alright, so one of the first big things that people notice as a difference between the theatrical, international, versus the director's cut and final cut is the first two have voiceover narration. The last two do not. Now there's an ongoing debate, but I'm going to quell that debate very quickly because I think it's a stupid debate that has very little weight to it. A lot of people say, oh, I liked the narration because it explained everything. Okay? Well, here's the problem with the voiceover narration explaining everything. The stuff it's explaining is for the most part self-evident and does not need to be explained. Not to mention the fact that a lot of what is explained in the voiceover narration is contradictory to the intent of the filmmakers. Okay, that voiceover narration was done without the involvement of the screenwriters and without the involvement of Ridley Scott. It was put in at the insistence of the studio because they felt the film would go over the heads of the average moviegoer. So, is it better with or without narration? Definitely without. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand why people like the narration because I hear the same damn thing over and over again. And here's why this argument is flawed. They say they like it because it puts them in mind of the old film noir movies from the 40s. You know, the old private detective of all the, you know, things were going fine until she walked into my office and blah, 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 and this is the city. My name is Friday. The story is true. That sort of thing. You know, the old voiceover narration, Philip Marlowe, stuff like that. And Blade Runner is very much that type of story, just set in a dystopian future setting. But it's still the same kind of story, right? So yeah, on the one side I can understand why people like the voiceover narration, but the problem is it's so badly written and so completely unnecessary that it actually detracts from the film. You know what I'm saying? This film is ready-made from the ground up to be open to interpretation, okay? And all the clues that you need to understand what's going on and to understand the subtext and to ask the right questions and find the answers are there in the film, visually, through the setting and the actions of the characters, the dialogue. Minimal though it is, it gives you a lot of information. So, no, it's not better with the voiceover narration, and if you think it is, you need to actually sit down, open your eyes and open your mind and watch the film without it, because that's the way it was always intended to be. So, yeah, the other thing is, I mean, call it the purist perspective, I want to see the film the way the director wanted me to see it. So if it was shot in widescreen, I want to see it in widescreen. If he wanted it to have no narration, I want to see it without narration. You know, it's really as simple as that. I mean, I have an artistic kind of personality, so for me, it's about the intent of the artist, not the intent of the studio that was funding the project. You know what I mean? So, there's another argument. This is the big one. Oh, this is a big one. I may have to do this in a part 4 because it's so big. And that is the ongoing argument about whether or not Deckard is in fact a replicant or a human. What do I think of that? Let's talk about it throughout the whole of part 4, shall we? See you there.